Thanks for sharing that reflection with us, those scriptures with us, Louise. Will you join with me in prayer? May these words that I speak be grounded in my soul, encouraged by the God presence in me. And may these words you hear be captured by your soul and enlivened by the God presence in you. Amen. The book of Joel in the Hebrew Bible is unique in biblical writing because it deals with only one topic, with one event. A plague of locusts which destroys the harvest and throws the nation into famine. There is no indication of when this event took place, and it was such a regular occurrence in that time and in that area of the world, and still is today, that there is no way of pinpointing the date of Joel's writing. Having said that, the book really follows a common biblical formula. It starts by saying that the plague of locusts is God's judgment on the people because they have turned away from God and been unfaithful. Most calamities that befell the Hebrew people, according to the Bible, were seen as a result of the people's unfaithfulness. We don't usually read that part of the story anymore in worship services because we know it's untrue. The plague of locusts is not a moral judgment on the people. It's a well understood and explained physical phenomenon. In the second part of the formula, and we read that passage this morning, the people are told that if they repent of their sins, God will forgive them and rain down abundance on them once more. I suspect this is what happened in Joel's event. I mean, the land usually recovers from a terrible calamity just as he described. Sooner or later it returns to its abundance. And if it hadn't returned to its abundance in Joel's case, then his book would never have made it into the Bible. It would have been assigned to the trash heap, and he would have been labeled as one of the false prophets. But his prophecy came true, and his book is there for us to read. In reading about the book of Joel, one of the commentaries suggested that we could appreciate the danger of the crisis Joel faced by recovering a sense of the terrible destructiveness of a locust infestation for a pre-industrial agricultural society. We should recover a sense of how terrible it is for these agricultural people. I don't think we can really do that. Nothing like that has ever happened to us. So what is our point of reference? How can we experience what they experienced, having never experienced anything like that? And the reason that it hasn't happened to us has nothing to do with us being morally superior people or because an interventionist God prefers us. Our prosperity depends more on a modern economy based on good transportation and distribution, and the capital to afford the food and goods which provide our advanced standard of living. We do have much to be grateful for, because our society operates so well to protect us from calamities such as this. Still, we continue to share the biblical story, perhaps because it makes us seem somehow to be under God's protection. Perhaps because of tradition, especially on Thanksgiving Sunday. But laying tradition aside, as I read the story in Joel, I wondered if there was any part of the story that did connect to me in a real and concrete way. Any part of the story that fit in my life today and could be for me a lesson in gratitude. And what came to my mind was how often, in the midst of calamity or great struggle, people are not brought down and laid low by their loss. Rather, so often we seem to be able to be touched by a sense of gratitude, even in the midst of calamity. In Joel's story, the gratitude comes from anticipating the time when the famine is over and the people will live in abundance once more. But it seems to be the case that even when the outcome is not going to be so favorable, people still find reasons for gratitude. Those thoughts brought me back to a short book this week that I reread by Oliver Sacks. Sacks was a neurologist who made a name for himself writing books in layman's language about some of his patients. I'm going to see if this works better if I hold it. Sacks was a neurologist who made a name for himself writing books in layman's language about some of his patients and some of their neurological conditions, including his own neurological condition. You might recognize the title of his book, Awakenings, because in 1990 it was made into a movie starring Robert De Niro and Robin Williams. In January 2015, Oliver Sacks learned that a cancer he had carried in his eye for 10 years had metastasized to his liver and become untreatable. He was given months to live, and so he immediately began to put together the 4 essays which comprise this book and summed up his view of life. He titled the book Gratitude. He wrote, "I feel a sudden clear focus and perspective. There is no time for anything inessential. I cannot pretend that I'm without fear, but my predominant feeling is one of gratitude. I have loved and been loved. I have been given much and have given something in return. Above all, I have been a sentient being, a thinking animal on this beautiful planet. And that in itself has been an enormous privilege and adventure." Oliver Sacks died in August of that year, 2015. Having both lost spouses, Noria and I relate from time to time how blessed we are to still be alive and enjoying a wonderful life with beautiful families in a wonderful world. Perhaps the realization of what we lost, and especially what our spouses lost through death, perhaps that's what makes us especially grateful for all we have. Every day is a precious gift. And all of that makes me think we need to be much more mindful about practicing gratitude. Nori keeps reminding me of the practice of gratitude that Jim talked about in one of his reflections some time back. You may remember he talked about setting out 2 bowls, one empty and the other filled with stones. And then whenever he thought about something for which he was grateful, he transferred a stone from the full bowl to the empty bowl. The beauty of that is that as you see the empty bowl filling with stones, it is a visible reminder of all that we have to be grateful for. I say that Nori keeps reminding me of that story because it's often easier to talk about forming a habit or a practice than it is to actually do it. That's why days like Thanksgiving Day are helpful. They provide the occasion upon which to hang these habits or practices about regularly feeling gratitude, kind of like New Year's resolutions. With the reminder that forming new habits and practices sometimes takes a great deal of resolve and a lot of work. It's interesting that in most of the conversations I've heard this week about Thanksgiving. They've centered around the menu for Thanksgiving dinner. And that's certainly the center of our celebration. On Thanksgiving Day, around our dinner table, we each take a turn to say what we are grateful for this Thanksgiving. Perhaps you could turn that into a daily practice throughout the year. Perhaps it could be in addition to or in place of the grace that was once a daily habit for us all. I found another suggestion for practicing gratitude this week when I was reading a piece in the magazine Zoomer by Elizabeth Renzetti. She began the article this way: I have a radical solution for improving your life. Think more about death. When you picture this earthly journey as an unending slog towards the horizon, the trivialities of the day seem insurmountable. Should I buy the fat-filled yogurt? Should I scream at that guy who just cut me off? Now imagine that you have just 6 months left to live. The delicious yogurt is a no-brainer, isn't it? You'd wave the driver through thinking maybe he's only got 6 months to live too, and he's on his way to see his family. She ended her piece saying, think about it next time you're trapped in a traffic jam. And we're finding that more often, aren't we, even in Lake Country, trapped in traffic jams. She says, at least you have this moment now as you're sitting there, heart beating and eyes open. How lucky you are to have even that. How lucky indeed. On this Thanksgiving Sunday, being alive is the greatest gift of all. And practicing gratitude should be a no-brainer.